I apologize. You're absolutely right. It's the funniest thing in the whole movie.
Mel Brooks has always lived between reverence and ridicule. He built comedies that mocked power, yet somehow honored it. Films that turned fear into laughter and chaos into choreography. From The Producers to Young Frankenstein, he rewired what Hollywood thought funny could look like.
You were wonderful. You were surprisingly good then. No, that was really terrific.
Behind the parody was a scholar, a man who watched cinema not to escape it, but to study its rhythm, the way light, silence, and madness could dance together. In interviews, Brooks has often mentioned the 6 films that shaped his creative DNA, not just his favorites, but his compass points. Here are the 6 movies Mel Brooks names as his favorites, and what they reveal about the mind that taught Hollywood to laugh at itself. Number 1. 12 Angry Men. For Mel Brooks, 12 Angry Men was proof that tension could be louder than laughter. A single room, a table, and a dozen men unraveling morality. It fascinated him. The story's pressure cooker rhythm and moral ambiguity became a template for his own sense of timing. Brooks admired how stillness could speak volumes, how truth could emerge through ordinary men and simple words instead of spectacle.
It takes a 6-car L train 10 seconds to pass a given point. Now let's say the given point is the open window of the room.
When Brooks first saw Sidney Lumet's film, he felt it move like a symphony of unease. Every pause, every beat of sweat became part of its score. He loved that it never left the room, never escaped the argument, never let the audience breathe. For Brooks, that was courage, turning the absence of action into pure momentum. What fascinated him most was the comedy of conviction. Brooks once said, "Serious people are often the funniest ones in the room." That idea followed him through his own career. The Producers, Blazing Saddles, even Spaceballs, each revealed how self-importance can collapse under its own weight. What Lumet did with jurors, Brooks did with cowboys, dictators, and dreamers. He showed that certainty is the most delicate form of chaos. He admired Lumet's control of rhythm, the slow zooms that closed the room like a fist, the sweat, the silence, the heat. It was musical. Brooks studied it, the way a conductor studies phrasing, watching how a single glance could alter the tempo of belief. He once stated, "Tension is rhythm in disguise." That thought shaped his timing forever. Brooks never copied 12 Angry Men. He absorbed it. It taught him that laughter doesn't always need jokes. Sometimes the rhythm of conviction itself is comic. To him, the film wasn't about justice. It was about how fragile certainty becomes under pressure. That fragility, that trembling line between control and collapse, would define his sense of balance as a filmmaker. For Mel Brooks, truth was never loud. It only needed the right silence to be heard. Number 2. The 400 Blows. Brooks saw in The 400 Blows the delicate ache of rebellion. It wasn't comedy, but it carried the same pulse. A lonely boy fighting invisibility. The film's raw honesty shaped Brooks's understanding of emotional rhythm. Beneath every gag, he believed, was a longing to be understood. That tension between absurdity and heartbreak would echo through his comedies, where laughter often hid the pain of being human. When Brooks first encountered François Truffaut's film, it was like watching memory itself misbehave. He admired how the camera refused to judge, how it followed the boy's confusion with compassion instead of sentimentality. The result was both painful and liberating. To Brooks, this was rebellion stripped of glamour, the kind that grows quietly inside people who feel unseen. What moved him wasn't the tragedy, it was the defiance. Brooks once said, "Freedom is the first joke life ever tells us." That idea would become the heartbeat of his career. Whether in The Producers or Young Frankenstein, his characters were misfits driven by chaos but yearning for recognition. Truffaut's young rebel and Brooks's manic dreamers shared the same hunger, to escape the walls built around them by others' expectations. He often studied how The 400 Blows balanced melancholy and motion. Every long shot of the Paris streets felt like a silent scream, a reminder that escape isn't always a place, it's a feeling. Brooks saw that rhythm and carried it into his own visual style. His camera often danced between control and release, chaos and calm, echoing the contradictions of Truffaut's language. He once stated, The best stories are about running away from what hurts and bumping straight into who you are. Brooks used that belief to fuel his own comedies. Behind every absurd invention, every exaggerated performance was a quiet truth borrowed from Truffaut's masterpiece, that laughter is simply rebellion with better timing. The 400 Blows reminded Brooks that art and adolescence share the same rhythm. Both are about breaking rules, then learning why they mattered in the first place. Number 3. High Noon. In High Noon, Brooks found a parable about standing alone when the crowd disappears. The ticking clock, the quiet resolve, the moral weight, it mirrored his own sense of artistic conviction. He admired its bravery, the refusal to decorate courage with charm. For a man who turned parody into art, Brooks recognized in High Noon a story about integrity, timing, and the cost of doing what's right. Fred Zinnemann's film for Brooks wasn't just a western, it was a study of loneliness. He saw in Gary Cooper's Marshall a reflection of every artist who must defend their work against silence. The town's indifference, the sense of isolation, carried the same energy Brooks often felt in his early career when studios dismissed his wild ideas. It was, to him, an allegory of creative defiance, a man facing not enemies, but the emptiness of approval. He once said, "Courage isn't about noise, it's about rhythm." That rhythm defined High Noon and fascinated Brooks. The real tension wasn't in the gunfight. It was in the waiting, the quiet seconds before everything changes. Brooks learned from it that suspense, like comedy, depends on timing, the same invisible beat that makes laughter erupt or hearts break. He admired how the film unfolded in real time. Every passing minute pulled the audience closer to inevitability. That structure became something Brooks often mirrored in his own work, stretching absurdity to the point where time itself became a character. In Blazing Saddles, every pause before the punchline echoed that same countdown, a test of patience and payoff. Brooks once stated, "Heroes and fools start from the same place. They both believe they can fix the world." He saw High Noon as proof that conviction doesn't always need reward, it only needs endurance. For Brooks, courage meant staying in the frame even when everyone else walks off set. High Noon gave him something beyond admiration. It gave him a blueprint to stand alone, hold the beat, and let the silence do the talking. Number 4. The Third Man. The Third Man captivated Brooks with its crooked beauty. Every tilted shadow, every echoing footstep in post-war Vienna spoke to his fascination with moral absurdity. He saw in it the comedy of corruption, a world spinning off its axis, yet pretending everything was fine. The film's blend of menace and wit reflected his own instinct, that laughter thrives best when surrounded by darkness.
Look down there. Would you really feel any pity if one of those dots?
Carol Reed's film moved like a riddle. Its streets coiled with secrets, its characters wore charm like armor. For Brooks, that uneasy balance between style and decay felt like show business itself, beautiful, dishonest, and irresistible. He admired how every shot seemed slightly askew, how even the angles told the truth that people refused to say out loud. He once said, "Comedy and tragedy are neighbors with a shared wall, they just argue over the light switch." The Third Man embodied that. Orson Welles' Harry Lime was both monstrous and magnetic, a man whose smile carried a moral vacancy that Brooks found disturbingly familiar. It reminded him that villains are rarely loud, they're often charming, convincing, and dangerously funny. Brooks watched the film not as a moral tale, but as choreography. The movement through Vienna's tunnels, the chase through shadows, it was physical poetry. The editing rhythm, sharp and unpredictable, inspired him to treat his own comedies like suspense films. In High Anxiety and Silent Movie, he used camera motion as punchline, tension as setup, and silence as the joke's secret weapon. He once stated, "A great shot can lie better than a bad script can tell the truth." That thought shaped his philosophy of parody. For Brooks, The Third Man wasn't simply a noir, it was a mirror, a reminder that charm and deceit often share the same expression. The film showed him that wit could be dangerous, that irony could outlast heroism. In its darkness, he saw his own reflection, a man trying to make sense of the absurd by learning how to laugh inside the shadows. Number 5. The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. What drew Brooks to the treasure of the Sierra Madre wasn't gold, it was greed. He loved its slow descent into madness, watching decency erode under desperation. The film's grit and irony mirrored his view of ambition's absurdity. For Brooks, it was proof that tragedy and comedy shared the same skeleton, both built on human weakness, both driven by the same relentless need to matter. John Huston's story of fortune hunters gone feral fascinated him. Brooks admired how quickly good intentions curdled under pressure, how humor and horror often lived in the same frame. To him, it was the anatomy of failure, men undone not by fate, but by the absurd weight of their own desire. He often described it as a lesson in madness, one that stripped civilization down to its hungriest instincts. He once said, "Greed is just fear in disguise, wearing a fancy hat." That single thought became a cornerstone of his writing. In films like The Producers and Life Stinks, Brooks built entire worlds around that idea, people chasing validation until it destroys the very thing they wanted to prove. Huston's Desert didn't just swallow its characters, it reflected the way ambition blinds. Brooks loved Huston's brutal honesty. There were no heroes, only people pretending they deserved more than they did. He found that irony beautiful. It mirrored the entertainment industry, fame as a mirage, laughter as currency. What he saw in Bogart's unraveling wasn't madness, but clarity. The moment someone realizes they've mistaken survival for success. He once stated, "When everything falls apart, that's when people finally tell the truth." For Brooks, that was comedy's secret. It reveals what people hide when things still look perfect. The treasure of the Sierra Madre reminded him that the line between genius and greed is razor thin. It taught him that chaos is never random. It's earned. And beneath every laugh he ever wrote, Brooks left a trace of Huston's desert wind, blowing away the illusion that anyone is ever in control. Foul. Number 6. Dr. Strangelove. Brooks considered Dr. Strangelove the purest blend of fear and laughter. He admired how Stanley Kubrick turned global annihilation into dark rhythm, a ballet of madness disguised as logic. The film spoke directly to Brooks's instincts as a satirist, exposed the absurdity in authority, make chaos sing. For him, it wasn't just a favorite. It was permission to laugh, even when the world was ending.
I have a plan. Monsieur!
Kubrick's satire wasn't about villains. It was about systems too foolish to know they'd gone insane. Brooks saw genius in how the film refused to separate comedy from catastrophe. The world teetered on the edge of nuclear disaster, and yet every line, every awkward silence was perfectly timed. It was theatre performed at the brink of extinction. He once said, "If you can't laugh at the end of the world, you were never really paying attention." That belief became central to his craft. In The Producers and History of the World Part 1, Brooks wielded laughter like a weapon against fear. Kubrick had shown him that humor could strip power of its disguise, that parody wasn't mockery, it was survival. What fascinated Brooks most was control. Kubrick's precision, the immaculate framing, the calm pacing of chaos, all of it echoed the kind of orchestration Brooks chased in his own films. He believed the key to great satire wasn't improvisation, but discipline, structure so tight that madness had no choice but to appear natural.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
He once stated, "The trick to satire is pretending you don't know it's funny." That was Dr. Strangelove in a single sentence. Its humor came from denial, from men who believed they were saving the world even as they doomed it. Brooks carried that rhythm into his own work, where politicians, producers, and kings became clowns without ever realizing it. For him, Dr. Strangelove was more than a movie. It was a masterclass in defiance. It taught him that the louder the world grows in its panic, the more powerful quiet laughter becomes, because sometimes the only sane response to madness is to make it sing. For Mel Brooks, these 6 films were more than influences. They were instructions on how to survive the absurdity of existence. Each one taught him something different: restraint, rebellion, courage, irony, greed, and the art of laughing at disaster. Together, they formed the map of his creative soul, a compass that pointed not toward perfection, but toward truth. Brooks's gift was never just humor, it was perspective. He understood that comedy isn't the opposite of pain, it's what grows from it. That laughter, when used honestly, can expose what seriousness hides. His favorite movies didn't just shape his career, they shaped his philosophy. That chaos is beautiful, failure is revealing, and sincerity is the bravest joke of all. Every filmmaker borrows light from those who came before. Brooks simply learned to turn that light into laughter. Which of Mel Brooks's favorites surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more cinematic deep dives.